How much is one clutch worth? In your ranked game, maybe a bit of elo, but in Pro Siege, one clutch could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what was the most valuable clutch performed at the 6 Invitational? And beyond that, what was the single most difficult clutch at SI? And when you put difficulty and value together, what was the single greatest clutch pulled off in Boston? I made a math formula and I figured all of that out and more, and in the end, I actually learned a lot about clutches and about what really matters in Rainbow Six Siege. So come along and let's break down the greatest clutches of the 6 Invitational. Alright, I'm gonna have to start with some math, but don't leave, please. I left some timestamps in the description if you just want to see the hype clutches. I think the math is pretty interesting, so it might be worth sticking around, but ultimately up to you. For me, greatness comes down to 2 factors: the difficulty of that clutch inside the server, and then the stakes of that clutch outside of it. A clutch on match point of the SI Grand Finals is going to be greater than in a meaningless group stage game, but by how much? Well, thankfully, I don't actually have to answer that question because Ubisoft has kind of already answered it for me. Look at the SI Grand Finals. The winner of that best of 5 receives a total prize of $1 million, while the loser still gets a second place prize of $450,000. With those 2 values, we can then say that the Grand Finals match on its own has a value of $550,000. And if one clutch were to make the difference between winning and losing that Grand Finals, we could say that one clutch was worth $550,000 as well. And we can do this with the lower bracket finals too. If you lose the lower bracket finals, you get the 3rd place prize of $240,000. But if you win, you get, well, we don't actually know. You might get that grand prize of $1 million, but you could also lose the finals and only earn $450,000. In statistics, when we don't know something, we estimate it with expected value. This is just a fancy way of saying that we average the values and weight them based on probability. So if we assume that each team has a 50% chance of winning in the grand finals, then we can say the expected value of winning the lower bracket final is the average of 1st and 2nd place prizes, or $725,000. Again, we take the difference and can now calculate that the lower bracket finals are worth $485,000. We can repeat this for every single series in the SI playoff bracket. For upper bracket games, we'll need 2 expected values, one for your expected prize if you win the match and one for if you lose the match, but the process is exactly the same, and we can assign a cash value to every single series. But we can go deeper. If we're playing in a BO3, then winning that 3rd map is worth the exact same prize as winning or losing the series, because ultimately they're the same thing. But for maps 1 and 2, these maps cannot on their own determine the result of the series, so necessarily they're gonna be worth less. Suppose your team won the 1st map and are now playing in map 2. If you win, you get the full value of winning that match, but if you lose, you now have a 50-50 chance where you could lose the series or you could still walk away and take the full winnings. That means that the value of losing this map is the average of winning or losing the series, and so the value of map 2 on its own is only worth half the value of winning the series. And the rabbit hole goes even deeper, because we can use this same logic to apply a value to every single round played in every single map in every single series. The math for rounds gets a little bit more complicated than for maps, because you do have to consider that a map in Siege can go into overtime, but with little Python script, it's nothing we can't handle. No, instead the thing we can't handle is calculating values for the group stage. So we can easily calculate the value of each placement in groups. If you win your group, you get placed in the 2nd round of the upper bracket. We know the expected earnings of winning or losing the upper bracket, and so it's easy to calculate the value of finishing 1st in your group. It's about $250,000 if you were wondering. But if you win your first BO3 on the 1st day of groups, how does that affect your odds of finishing 1st? This is one of those math problems that isn't actually possible to solve, at least in a reasonable amount of time. Instead, we can look at every game in the group stage, set the score as it was right before that match was played, and then run 2 million simulations for each outcome of that match to see how the odds would change based on the outcome. It's been a long week. Keep in mind as well, we can't just simulate the winner of the match, because in groups, a 2-1 win gives fewer points than a 2-0, meaning we need to simulate the full group stage 4 times for every single series. And in theory, I should have done it even more because round differential affects tiebreakers, but listen, if I did that, this video would never see the light of day, so I just flipped the coin for every tie. It's gonna be close enough in our simulations. In general, group stage rounds were worth an average of $20,000 less than playoff rounds, but there were still some really important clutches that happened in really important group stage rounds, which raises the question, what was the single most valuable clutch in the group stage? Meet Hasham. You've probably heard of his peak. Hasham is playing for the Falcons in the final match of the group stage against Raza Company Academy. Currently, Falcons are in last place, but they're just 1 point behind PSG Talon, who they have the tiebreaker over. That means if Falcons can win just one map, they'll make it to playoffs. But if they can't, they'll be out in dead last. Map 1 went to 15 rounds, but after Bassetto put up a 3k roam on Ella, the Falcons lost the map, meaning Map 2 was their last chance to win one. Map 2 has been close the entire time. Falcons took the first half 4-2, but Raza started the third quarter with a perfect defensive rotation to take a 5-4 lead. Falcons' adaptations were strong though, and they managed to win the next two, bringing the score to a precarious 6-5 lead in round number 12. With everything on the line, JLED calls for a double shield rush on Lair basements, with Blitz and Finka pushing into stock, Blackbeard and Lion are rushing filtration, and Hasham on the Dokkaebi posted up on blue stairs, hunting roamers who will be panicking trying to get back to site. Hasham catches Smoke, who goes to pinch filter, but the rest of the rush doesn't go so well. Exactly 10 seconds after the rush starts, Hasham's teammates have all died in the site, leaving him alone on the top floor with no defuse kit and just over 2 minutes to hunt down the final two defenders. The problem? Legion has just flanked through lobby, and Hasham has no idea. If Legion hits this shot, overtime will be forced, and with an attacking start side, Falcons will likely lose and be eliminated from the tournament. But Legion whiffs. Both players are far too nervous to commit to this engagement, and eventually Legion finds his way back to his teammates, which means Hasham has just given up an exceptional opportunity to make this a 1v1. But Hasham is literally insane. He uses the clock perfectly, waiting out Goyo canisters, a goo mine, and then hits two of the cleanest shots of the entire match to win the 1v2 off pure mechanics and game sense alone. This single 1v2 from Hasham doubled the expected winnings for Falcons from $35k to over $70,000 by allowing them to break out of groups and not finish dead last and give that spot up to PSG Talon. And as it turns out, Falcons did pretty well in the playoff stage, and they left SI with over $100,000 in prizes. Not bad compared to the 35 grand they likely would have gotten if Hasham didn't win that 1v2. But there was more to greatness than just how much money something made you, and to account for this, I created a difficulty formula to assign a number to each individual clutch, defining exactly how tough it was, and it looks like this. Okay, I know it's more math, don't click away, please. I'm not gonna lie, this formula is way more complicated than the math we use to calculate expected value. The gist of it is that we take the number of opponents in a clutch and assign a baseline value. So a 1v1 is worth a base 1 point, and it doubles from there. So a 1v2 is worth 2 points, a 1v3 is worth 4, a 1v4 is worth 8, and a 1v5 is worth a base 16 points. From this base, we increase the difficulty based on the state of the clock, with defenders getting a boost if the clutch starts in a post plant or very early in the round, and attackers getting a boost if the clutch started very late in the round. If you want to read a short math paper, I put the whole explanation of our difficulty formula in the description. I'll put a graph on screen for now. Feel free to pause and take a closer look if you care. But basically, the difficulty formula spits out a multiplier that in practice ranged from 1.0 to almost 17, which we can then apply to the value of a clutch and then get an adjusted value for every single clutch, which we can then use to rank them and find ultimately the greatest clutch at SI. But before we get to that, I need to talk about that 17x multiplier that I mentioned, because while basically every clutch had a multiplier between 1 and 4, a few of them peaked upwards towards 5, 6, 7, and 8, only one clutch got the distinction of getting a double-digit difficulty multiplier, and of course, it was the only 1v5 in the entire tournament. While 1v5s are rare even in ranked, in Pro League they are genuine unicorns, and I've only worked a small handful of 1v5s through my entire career as a Rainbow Six broadcaster. But in his third group stage match up against Scars in round 5 of map 1, DS Lucas didn't care about the odds. Oxygen were going for a very direct take on the Vents bomb site of Border. Mira pushed up to Nitro Hat and killed Nures, while Fenrir jumped out the AC window to grab Yaga off Repel, leaving the Brazilian duo of Diaz and Gomez in a 2v5. Gomez immediately walked in front door and just died. And at this point, even Dez is counting this one as over as he casts Diaz trying to walk into the top floor.
Hat was silenced very, very early on. Diaz getting at least one to deny the flawless and gets a second as well, actually, as he puts one more on his backside. A good little bit of KD padding, but I'm afraid that's probably all it's going to be with 3 still left standing.
Now, Diaz has, on occasion, been been the last guy alive on his team before, so he knows how to use the clock, and he takes his time on the top floor to dispatch the 2 roamers, clear some util, and even play with the Fenrir a bit, almost letting him crawl away to safety before securing his second kill. With 45 seconds left, Diaz heads down the metal stairs, and I gotta say, Scars has some truly baffling positions in this 3v1. Wamai and Kaid are in customs and are basically preparing to swing the exact same angle. Meanwhile, Fishlake is all the way in Bathroom, an area of the map that Diaz doesn't really care about, as he's got the defuse kit and plenty of choices for where he could plant. Diaz fakes a quick plant in Workshop, which baits Wamai and Kaid to swing out into the hallway together and line up for Diaz to find both of them with just one spray. Scars have taken a completely free round and have now thrown 4 bodies away, leaving Mira in a 1v1 just against Diaz. And you know how this ends. Diaz has genuinely perfect timing getting on and off the plant, and he pulls off what is the single hardest thing to do in Rainbow Six Siege.
Plant is probably going to go down. Go no! 1v5! Diaz plays it perfectly!
You might be wondering, if I ranked every single clutch, then surely we can also find the worst clutch of SI. And of course I have that for you. There were 9 clutches at SI that scored exactly 0 in my calculations because they happened in rounds that just did not matter. For example, on the last day of groups, when G2 were playing against Unwanted, G2 were already mathematically locked into first place, so their expected winnings couldn't change at all, no matter how many great clutches they had in that series. But those 9 worthless clutches still had difficulty multipliers, and so if we go off the lowest of those, we get Taiyu versus W7M. Round 1 of map 1 as the single worst clutch of SI. Now, Taiyu didn't do anything wrong in this clutch, but heading into this game, Scars were already eliminated from the tournament, so this game didn't mean anything to them to begin with. And the clutch itself, well, an infant could have pulled off what he did, because the 1v1 technically started with just 9 seconds left in the post plant, and despite his best efforts, there was no time for Loban to find the last kill and then jump on the disable. Technically, this was not the easiest clutch at SI. That award would go to Grixer in round 10 of Bank against Secret when he was put into a 1v1 clutch with about 500 milliseconds left on the clock. And if you don't want to count that because it was literally impossible to lose, False technically won a 1v1 clutch, which started with 7.06 seconds left on a post-plant counter, which I guess if Handy could teleport and False had a stroke was theoretically not impossible. But you're not here to learn about the worst clutch or the most valuable or the most difficult. I promised you greatness, and so without further ado, here are the top 4 greatest clutches at the Six Invitational. And if you're wondering why it's top 4 and not top 3 or top 5, it's because the 3rd and 4th best clutches actually happened in the exact same game, so I felt bad not including them both. And that game was the upper bracket quarterfinal matchup between BDS and Unwanted. The upper bracket quarterfinals are an extremely valuable series because if you win, you lock in a top 6 spots and have a 38% chance of making the grand finals. But if you lose, you now have to run a lower bracket gauntlet and must win 5 straight matches without dropping 1 in order to have a chance at winning SI. But the 4th best clutch didn't come in a particularly critical round. It was map 2, round 9, and BDS were down 5-3, but up 1-0 in the series. There's 20 seconds to go, and Saltov and Shaiko are in a 2v5. With help from a red ping, Saltov kills Dream and regains control of the top floor. The clock goes down to 10 seconds, and Unwanted have a very strong game plan. Blitz is going to push up yellow to harass Saltov, Twitch will toss in a smoke to cover the plant, Finka is pushing into sight to kill Shaiko, and then Hot and Cold is ready with the diffuser to put it down. Even if Saltov maintains top control, denying a Monty plant under a smoke is pretty much impossible from above, and Blitz is not going to make maintaining top easy at all. Finka kills Shaiko, and officially the 1v4 starts, with 6.5 seconds left on the clock. Saltov is fast on the trade, but it really shouldn't matter. Blitz is scaring him off the angle, and there's nothing to stop the plant. Except there is. Before he died, Shaiko had placed a single goo mine on the piano door, and since Saltov killed Finka before she went through the door, Monty got hit by the goo instead. And against all odds, for the last 5 seconds, Saltov stayed alive while Monty couldn't start a plant. On difficulty alone, that was the craziest clutch of the upper quarterfinals, but a 1v2 on round 12 of map 3 edges it just out as the best clutch of the series. BDS are defending Bathroom on border, and it's a 4v4 with 45 seconds to go. Shaiko trades 1-for-1 on the teller's window, which opens an angle for Dream to get in and start planting. Off cam, LickyFac makes a swing to kill Gavin and then immediately smokes the plant area. Dream should have been able to finish the plant, but he was forced off by a push from Yuzus, who came up into bathroom. Brede goes down a split second before Dream ticks out to smoke damage, making this a technical 1v2, but the focus really comes down to the final 1v1. Adam rotates the kit to a new plant spot, and Lickyfax sees this on a cam, so he rotates top floor before dropping down into the hallway and letting Adam finish the plant. If Lickyfax has a Toxic Babe, this is free, but he's already used them all, so he whips out the SMG-11 and does it the old-fashioned way. Not the craziest clutch, but the composure shown by Lickyfax on series point is ridiculous. And because this clutch wins them the upper bracket quarterfinals, it has the distinction of being the single highest value clutch of the entire tournament. Our second greatest clutch is similar to the third, in that it's primarily here due to the extreme importance of the round and less because it was crazy difficult, but it's still a pretty sick play. And I am of course talking about the Grand Finals, round 15 of map 1. 35 seconds left on the clock. FaZe are defending Kitchen on Chalet. Handy's above, and KDS is in Fireplace. BDS have 2 attackers in the bomb site with Defuse Kit, and Brede is making the call to hop in Trophy. Yuzus' attention is pulled too many different ways, and he dies first on the Blackbeard. KDS then swaps to the Deagle and kills the Twitch, leaving Brede in a 1v2. The defenders have the Defuse Kit, and there's only 22 seconds left on the clock. Handy pushes down the solar stairs, but whiffs his shots, and Brede flicks backwards to find the downed player. Then, with full knowledge of the last guy's position and wielding a Commando versus a Deagle, it's not exactly a fair fight. Since this is round 15, FaZe then stand up and take off their headsets, believing they've just lost map 1 of the Grand Finals. But don't forget that SI has infinite overtime, so the game actually keeps going from here. It takes a few more rounds, but BDS eventually win map 1. With the benefit of hindsight and knowing how round 16 goes, as well as maps 2 and 3, that one clutch from Brede single-handedly prevented BDS from being swept in their first ever SI Finals. And now it's time for the highest rated clutch at the 6th Invitational. We saw a clutch that relied on plays from both Shaiko and Solotov, we saw a clutch from Lickyfax, and we just looked at one from Brede. Yeah, I don't know how, but the best 4 clutches at SI all came from BDS, and the best one is saved for the one player we haven't talked about. This is Yuzus against SSG in the upper bracket finals. It's map 3. Winner guarantees themselves a spot in the top 3 and has a 75% chance at making the grand final. Loser has to play FaZe in the lower bracket, which, well, with hindsight, you can guess how that would go. BDS are defending the top floor of Nighthaven with 2 minutes on the clock, but everything is about to fall apart. Faltz and Benja are pinching into rafters using the outside door and the window. Faltz dies, but Benja picks up 2 kills, just as Ashen lurks into connector and kills both Brede and Solotov, leaving just Yuzus alone in a 1v3 with over half the round still to go. But there's one saving grace that makes this clutch possible. Before being killed, Solotov downs the Blackbeard in Aqua Hallway, which dropped the diffuser straight into the arms of Yuzus. After cleaning up the down and setting himself up in the hallway, Yuzus now needs to stop the final 2 attackers from clearing his position, and all he's got for cover is 1 reinforcement. And Ashen is holding what should be an automatic win condition. 2 nades, which he tosses at Yuzus and then forces him to rotate out and expose himself to SSG's angles. But instead of immediately running from the first nade, Yuzus takes the time to chuck a nitrocell at Benja in rafters. This prevents Benja from swinging in off his teammate's nade and lets Yuzus dip back into cover before he's able to be punished. Then, instead of using the clock, Ashen decides to just go for it and makes the ballsy play to push up into command. Yuzus punishes this, and it's now a 1v1 against Benja, who is only 1 bullet away from death since his entry into Garage. With incredible patience, Yuzus then slows down, listens for the push-up, and completes the greatest clutch at the 6th Invitational. Except, I've been lying to you. All of these clutches were fantastic. They were pulled off at critical moments, worth thousands of dollars, and in nearly impossible situations. But no matter how much I want to, my formula can't calculate pressure or momentum. There is more to the difficulty of a round in Rainbow Six Siege than just your number of opponents and the time on the clock. And there's more to a round than just the change in expected earnings it'll get you. Sometimes the hardest clutches are hard because they require the person clutching to make an impossible decision. Sometimes that clutch is impactful because the momentum swing from it is so great that it cements you and your team as the best in the world. BDS may have had the 4 mathematically greatest clutches at SI, but if we're being honest, there was one moment and one team that was greater. This is round 4, map 4, SI Grand Finals, Handy versus BDS. BDS have just won back-to-back rounds to take their first lead of the map. There's 12 seconds on the clock, and FaZe's push has just fallen apart at the hands of Shaiko stringing together a miraculous 3K by playing in blue. Handy then sprints in and does what Blitz does best to trade one of the greatest players of all time and put himself in a 1v1. But this 1v1 shouldn't be winnable. There is 9 seconds left when Handy kills Shaiko, 4.5 seconds left when Handy picks up the defuse kit. If Handy runs to Armory to try to plant, he'll be holding F deep into 000 and will surely lose the round. If he sprints into the last defender, he won't make it in time. Handy has 0 win conditions to save this round. So he does the only thing he can do, and he gambles on a misplay. With 3.5 seconds, Handy aims at the Moto door and the whole arena freezes. If Yuzis takes his hands off the keyboard, he will win the round. And to be fair to Yuzis, man, who in their right minds is holding an angle with Diffuser in pocket with 600 milliseconds left in the round? Handy is. FaZe would win the next 4 rounds in a row, getting themselves a 6-2 lead that BDS just had no hope of coming back from. This one momentum shift, in my opinion, decided the fate of the SI Grand Finals. And for that reason, it's the greatest clutch of SI. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. To be honest, the math kind of broke my brain a little bit, but at the same time, it was a really fun video to make. If you want to see a video about every ace in Spoit's career, I made a video breaking those down right here, or if you've already seen it, then YouTube thinks you'll enjoy this other video on this side. Either way, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time.